Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, on Wednesday, April 10th. Coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, and on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. Doing a live radio show and a live social media show at the same time. So anybody that's new to the show, wondering what's going on, what I keep looking over at my screen for a lot of times, or what is the format, what we're trying to do with this whole thing, that's what we're doing. We're doing two of them at the same time. We got a great opportunity a couple of years ago to be on Ken Adams' show, The Thin Line with Ken Adams, on that airs on 98.7 every weekday from 12 to 1. Got an opportunity to spend some time with Ken for 2 years on his Wellness Wednesday show, and then ended up getting the opportunity to do this show every night. So we're in our 7th month doing it this way, and we're trying to get better at it. Sometimes I think we are, sometimes I think we're not, but we're not going to give up on it until we do. So, and we try to bring you health information from a wellness chiropractor to try to give you the things that you need to be healthy. And we're trying to give you as much of the cutting edge stuff that we can, as much research that we can, as much clinical experience that we can, and so that you have the tools that you need so that you can make good, healthy decisions for you and your family. That's what the show is about. We base it in chiropractic on the concept of the subluxation, meaning interference in your nervous system. And that's what allows me to talk about these things within my scope of practice. So I try to make sure that I stay within my scope of practice. I'm not trying to get outside of my scope of practice. The people in Texas are fussy about stuff like that. And so we try to make sure that we're not crossing any of those lines. But if I can tie it back to a subluxation, then it's fair game. And everything that we talk about is that realm. I also want you to know that, there's some high-powered doctors in Lubbock and that are doing some cutting-edge stuff, that are doing some high-powered stuff. And so I get some patients. I had a conversation with a couple today that went to Dallas and got a whole scan of all the things that they are doing. And then they came here, and their comment to me was that they scanned us for everything under the sun, and everything you'd ever possibly want to know, they scanned us for. And I said, well, did they check your omega-6/3 ratio? And they were like, I don't know about that. I never heard that before. And so my point of that is that when you go to different doctors, they see different things, but you might not have to go too far to get good quality health and wellness care that'll help you take you into the future. So just part of the day. It was a busy day at the Rock. We started this morning at 7:30. We were pretty solid all day long, and it was really awesome. We were rocking for us, and so good. Last night's show we talked about exercise a little bit, and then Monday night show we finished up and took health to church, and then we finished up some thoughts from Friday about people, and I really got some good feedback with that about how the shows were, and I think that's a cool thing, and I've got a bunch of those written down that, and so I might spend a little bit of time tonight talking about some things, just people stuff. I asked my wife and daughter before they left. She came and got adjusted. My daughter came and got adjusted today. And I said, you got any topics you want me to talk about tonight on the radio? And she said, you could talk, you could it could be a get to know you night on why you got into this and why you're a chiropractor and all that sort of thing. And I said, well, I was thinking about that. I was like, we've had those shows. We back in September, I guess, that like, why is that? And I thought maybe it'd be a good idea just to spend a few minutes just refreshing that, because you may not understand. One of my new patients that listens to me on the radio on 98.7, she came in to see me, and I told you this guy last week or two that she was like, I just thought you were some nerd that was reading a script off the or something, and I was like, well, that's pretty close. I mean, that is kind of what I am. But no, my former life was athletics. That's what I did. I coached college football for 6 years. I played quarterback at Texas Tech. My life started baseball. I took care of a little baseball player today that had a hip pointer, and 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 I was like, yep, I knew that. I know that little guy. I was that little guy when I was 10 years old, and the little stud guy on my baseball team. My dad was a coach. My mom was a teacher. We were in Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City, when I was a little kid, and we'd moved there from East Texas, and I so started baseball the year before I was in kindergarten. Started football when I was in the first grade. I think I was actually 6 years old when I started football, and so athletics was my life. And we moved to Roswell when I was in fifth grade, and onto a horse ranch, and we bred race horses. We had quarter horses and thoroughbreds. We had, at one time, I don't know, there was probably 5 or 6, 7 stallions, on and off throughout the time, and we had a bunch of mares and a bunch of babies, and it was good. It was a good living. It was good for a kid to have all that responsibility. It was hard work. It was work on the ranch, and my dad was a stickler for the way that you took care of a horse, and made sure that you treated them properly. And there was way times that, that as a teenage kid, I thought he was full of crap, really, to tell you the truth. Like, if this horse bites me one more time, I'm going to kick him in the belly and slap him across his face. And he's like, do not hit my horses. And so, yeah, those were interesting times, lots of times. But it was great now that I grew up and I can understand. It's like, the maturity and how you're supposed to handle things. And so that was good living. We trained race horses. We spent our summers in Ruidoso, and my dad he'd go to Albuquerque in the wintertime to the state fair in New Mexico, and down to El Paso at Sunland Park. And in the summer times, we were either in Ruidoso or Santa Fe or both, and just went to the racetrack. Went to the racetrack from starting in 7th grade, I believe, and all the way through. I got to my junior and senior year. Before my junior and senior year, he let me stay home in Roswell in the summertime so I could get ready and play football. And so I got to work what I thought was going to be a cush grocery store job, and ended up not. But I'm not going to get into that tonight. It was a hard working, hot job. But then injured my shoulder in a high school football game when I was a junior, and had a separated shoulder. And there was a chiropractor in town that took care of athletes. And he said, my coach sent me over. His name was Dr. Payne, of all things, Payne, Dr. Payne. But it was funny from a chiropractic standpoint that's where you had to go see Dr. Payne. He should have had some T-shirts made up. And he was quite a piece of work as a human being. He was really a scumbag. But that's where I started my chiropractic journey. My coach sent me to Dr. Payne, and when I got there, he said, "Do you want to get adjusted?" And I had no idea what that meant. And so that's what I did. I just laid down on the table. He gave me an adjustment, and I thought it was great. I really did. I thought it was fantastic. And then it didn't fix my separated shoulder, but I slept really great that night. And we did some ultrasound and stem stuff on my shoulder and tried to help that healing process. And then I was dating Leslie, my wife, and because we met in 7th grade, started dating the spring of our sophomore year in high school, and then started going steady when we were juniors. And we were dating, and her sister was married to a guy who was a chiropractor who had just gotten out of chiropractic school. Nope, he was actually in chiropractic school when we started dating. So all of a sudden, I'm just kind of getting surrounded a little bit with chiropractic. And then I went through a whole season of time. I went to Eastern New Mexico on a scholarship, a football scholarship, and then I left there. I walked on at Texas Tech and earned a scholarship at Texas Tech. But this whole time, my brother-in-law, my future brother-in-law, had moved to Lubbock. He had a rock in practice. He was seeing a lot of people, and he's a super attractive guy. And we were in and out of his office. We were hanging out with him on the weekends. We'd go over there, and it was just always around. It was always around me, this whole idea of chiropractic. But I had no idea what it meant. And so I ended up coaching college football for 6 years, 3 years at New Mexico State, and 3 years at Texas Tech. And Coach Dykes retired. He was my boss. Spike Dykes was his name. Great human being. I love him more every day as I get older. He's just a good guy, and I really appreciate the 7 years I got to spend with him. And then he retired, and they didn't renew our contracts. Coach Leach came in. Mike Leach took over, and we all lost our jobs at Texas Tech. And my brother-in-law said, "Why don't you come work for me?" And so I told him, I said, "Dude, you're the weirdest human being I've ever met. I'm not working in your office." But he offered me a job I couldn't refuse, and I went to work. And just being in his office for a couple weeks, I learned what a subluxation was. I learned what interference in the nervous system was. I learned how your body's trying to talk to your brain, and your brain's trying to talk to your body. And if there's some sort of interference, your body's not going to function properly, and your body's going to break down. And I don't know. I mean, I was a 4.0 student in high school. I was a all-conference, academic all-conference player at Texas Tech. I was on the 1993 Southwest Conference all-academic team. I wasn't a fool, I don't think. Well, I guess I was foolish in some things, but I was at least educated. I had a degree in exercise and sports science and a master's degree in sports administration, and I had 6 years of college athletics, and I'd had a little bit of exposure, not much, but I didn't have any exposure to this subluxation thing. But it just made sense. It made sense to me that, okay, number one, if the way the body works is that your brain is a receiver of information, okay, your brain, and what I learned later is that your brain receives 3 trillion bits of information per second. 3 trillion bits of information per second from your body. Every part of your body is reporting to your brain all the time. You know where your body is in space. I know that my right foot is on this stool. I know my left foot is on this stool. I know I got my shoes on, got my socks on. I can feel all that information. All that information is coming into my body from my brain, and my brain is a receiver of information. If that's true, and then my brain is going to process all that information and send a signal back down to my body to set my body in order. If that's true, and my brain and spinal cord is the master system of my body's made up of systems, right? My body's made up of cardiovascular system. I've got endocrine system, that's my hormones. I've got musculoskeletal system. I've got all these systems that are working, right? You got your organ system. And what is the one thing that you can't live without, right? You can't live without your brain. You can't live 1 second. When your brain stops, it all stops. And so if that's true, if it's true that your body is sending information to your brain, and if it's true that your brain processes that information, then sends a signal back to your body, and if it's true that your brain is the master of your body, it makes total sense to me that interference in the nervous system, some sort of disruption from the way that my body is transmitting energy into my brain and the way that my brain is transmitting energy back to my body. If there's interference in those two communication pathways, it makes logical sense to me that my body might not function properly. Like I might actually lose some sort of function in my body if I've disrupted the signal going from my brain to my body. And I'll tell you, it's like even in chiropractic to this day, it is a super a hot topic. Like the new kids and the new teachings and all that stuff, they hate the word subluxation. They don't even want to talk about it. And after 20 years of being in chiropractic, of being in my 20th years of having a license, and I've been in chiropractic basically since I was 17 years old when I separated my shoulder, it just makes complete logical sense to me. If my body is designed to give information to my brain, like, and if you don't understand what that means, just touch something. Just use your hand right now and just touch something. Like I just touched this countertop with my hand. Number one, I felt it. How did I know that I felt it? Let's do it this way. Let me close my eyes. I'll close my eyes and then I'll touch the countertop. Okay, now how do I know that I'm touching the countertop? Well, I know that because I have receptors that are in my hand that are connected to nerves that are in my hand that run up my arm to my spinal cord that are connected, not physically connected, but synapses. They plug in basically to another set of nerves that send that information up to my brain to this place in my brain called my sensory cortex in my parietal lobe that tells me that I'm actually touching something. Like this whole piece of information, I don't have to see it. Like I can block my eyes from it and I could touch something. Let me see if I'm touching my phone. Yep, there's my phone. Did you see how my hand did that? Like my hand is like bouncing around my phone so that I can get a grip on my phone. My brain is like searching for what's going on, and I know that I'm touching my phone. Let's see what else I can touch. Oh, there's the supplement. Okay, what else is there over here to touch? There's the box. There's the box of fish oil. How do I know all that's happening? Because I'm receiving information from my hand. I'm receiving information from my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder. I'm receiving information from my core muscles because when I put my hand out in front of me, if I don't counterbalance that with some sort of contraction, I'll fall over, right? So when I do that, I can feel the muscles tighten in my low back. Did you know that for every 1 inch of forward head posture you have an extra 10 pounds of pressure on your low back? Yeah, think about carrying something heavy. If you carry a box right up next to you and then push that box out in front of you, I can feel my back muscles tighten up just by moving that box away from me. And that is all being received by my brain. And my brain is receiving it. Think about how many a trillion is. Like it's the national debt of America, right? We ain't never going to pay that off, ever. In the history of mankind, are we going to pay that off? That's $1 trillion. That's a long time. That's a lot of data. And so your brain is receiving all that information, like lots of information per second. And your brain is processing all that information. And it's processing it in real time, but it's also processing it against history. And it's also processing it against the future. Like that's all going on at the same time. So you can just imagine, how important the information is going from your body to your brain. Because if your brain's trying to keep you in balance, in homeostasis, it's trying to keep you healthy, your brain is trying to process all this information. That's why it's like, what difference does it make if I have a joint that's not moving through a full range of motion? Just think about the difference between a full range of motion. Let's just do it this way. A single index finger, full range of motion, versus an index finger that's going through a half range of motion. If you understand the concept that that is neurological input into your brain. Have you ever heard someone say, be careful what you put in your brain? Be careful what kind of movies you watch? Old folks used to not, remember the Baptists? No one could dance back in the day, right? You ever watch Footloose, right? Don't be putting that heathenistic thought into your brain. Don't be watching those horror movies and putting that stuff into your brain. You got to be careful with this TikTok thing, right? You got to be careful because you might be putting something into your brain that destroys your brain. Okay, How about this? I'm putting full range of motion of this index finger. You guys on the radio, I'm bending my finger on my left index finger, and I'm all the way down. But I'm putting half range of motion in the index finger on the right side. Now think about what's happening with my input into my brain with that. Because now I'm getting all the data coming from this joint, and it's firing into this brain. Is it logical to believe that a full range of motion is going to actually fire more volts or power or whatever it's called into the brain versus a joint that just goes through a half range of motion? Is that logical to believe? I think it is. I think it's logical to believe that this motion is actually sending more energy to my right brain than bending a half range of motion here, and it's sending the energy to my left. So now I'm getting an input that's imbalanced on the right side and the left side of my brain. You ever see anybody that hold their head like this all the time? I do the same thing. Like, it's like my head doesn't sit straight, and it's like, which way? You ever see anybody that holds their head like this? Could there be a difference in brain input? Yes, there could be a difference in brain input. There could be a difference in the way that the brain is receiving information, which is causing the brain to set the body in order based on what it's given. Because your brain's not setting you, the majority of the 3 trillion bits of information is coming through your eyes, and your eyes are sending it into your brain, but your brain is getting electrical impulses from your eyeball into the brain. Think about that. Think about how that input actually goes. I'm looking at a computer screen, I'm looking at an iPad, I'm looking at a tablet, I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at a bottle of vitamin D, which maybe we'll talk about here in a minute. And that light is hitting me. All this picture that I'm getting right now is hitting my eyeball, but on the other side of my eyeball, it's an electrical impulse. So what is actually received back here into my occipital lobe and up through my frontal lobe, which vision is firing, all that stuff, and it's also firing from my eyes into my vestibular system to keep me balanced, and that's all going into my cerebellum, all that, my vestibular system, my eyeballs, all that stuff, my proprioception, the feeling that I'm getting from my feet are keeping me balanced on this chair. It's all that information, but it's not a picture when it's in your head. It doesn't travel through your nervous system as a picture. It travels through your nervous system as an electrical impulse, as energy. That's really what we are, is energy. And everybody knows it, because when you get around someone who's got high energy, they're just fun to be around. There's just certain people that you just like to hang out with because they just have great energy. And then there's some people that you absolutely do not like to hang out with, right? We know those people. It's like, golly, they walk in the room and suck the energy right out of the room. They're just so negative the way that they function, right? And that's energy. Well, think about that from an energy standpoint inside your body. What you're putting into your brain is going to determine what your brain gives out, what your brain puts out. It's going to set me in order. I'm getting all this feedback. I can see that window over there. I know that wall's there. I just saw that car go down there, that bird fly by. There's a car went down the street. I could see all that stuff. There's a car that went down the street. I'm getting oriented in space because I'm getting all this information that's coming into my brain. Well, what if the information that's coming into my brain gets interfered with? You guys, you older people, y'all wear glasses? Do you have a no line bifocals? You ever do you realize how difficult that is to orient yourself? I know you do. You may not have ever thought about it, but I know that you actually feel it, because it's like, it's super hard to orient myself. If I look down right now, this right here is completely clear on my screen. But if I turn my head that far looking out of these glasses, that gets blurry. Now that's not the way that your eyeballs are supposed to work. Take my glasses off, now the whole thing's blurry. When I look this, if I look at that, that's blurry. But now, I, if I'm looking at something, if I'm looking at you, I might actually turn my head just a second and look at the screen and look back at you. And I shouldn't have any blurred vision by looking at the screen and then using my eyeballs to bring myself back. But when I put my glasses on, I can't do that. I can't put myself back into that oriented position the same way, because if I do that and I look back at you through my glasses, you're blurry again. And that changes the input. And now think about whether or not we're moving enough during the day. Now think about whether or not the internal state that we're in is inflamed. Like you see how it just adds up. And when you talk about it over and over again every single night. There's so much of it that to me, I'm not talking about the same thing. It's so intertwined. It's like looking at the Mona Lisa or something and say, well, we're talking about the Mona Lisa again tonight. But no, we're just talking about the lack of eyebrows or something just tonight. It gets that way. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. Hang on with us. We'll be right back right after these messages. So I got introduced to this when I was a kid, 17 years old. This idea of chiropractic. Didn't understand it for 12 years. Got adjusted, didn't get adjusted, just kind of went through it. And then I went to work in my brother-in-law's office, and I learned what a subluxation was, and I saw what happened to people and how they got healthier, how they came in bad and they got adjusted and they were better. And I was like, what? And then I heard him talk about that subluxation thing and interference in your system, and it just made sense to me. It's not voodoo. It's not some sort of black magic. It's not craziness. Like, it makes total sense if you just would. I mean, I don't even think it's that far of a stretch to just think about, hey, if your body's trying to talk to your brain and your brain's trying to talk to your body, and there's some sort of interference between the two, maybe your body doesn't function properly. I mean, it seems logical to me. And that's the foundation of my life. That's the foundation of what we do at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And that's the foundation of health as far as I'm concerned. You're subluxated. If you're subluxated, you have interference in your nervous system, you're subluxated, you're not functioning properly, you're not healthy. It's just period. That's the end. It's like, and then which things might be caused from a subluxation? What possibly what might happen in my body with a subluxation? Could I get a headache? Yes. Could I have, hang on one second, I got to get us back on the radio. Okay, everybody, we're back. We're talking about my history, and we could thank my daughter for this one, for just planting that seed right before we went on air. And because I got some stuff that I was going to talk about, and we may get to some of it here in a second. But we're talking about that idea that, okay, you got a subluxation. Now you've got interference in your nervous system. And now what is your body going to do when you have interference in your nervous system? Well, what it's going to do is it's going to give you a symptom. It's going to give you a feedback. It's going to give you some sort of signal that's telling you that you've got yourself in an environment that's incongruent with health. I had a great conversation this morning with one of my guys. He's an awesome guy. He's a retired guy, and he's retired 3 times, he told me today, because he didn't have stuff to do on the other times. But we were talking about it, and he said, he made the statement to me. He was like, okay, I work all day long. If I work in the yard, he said, I remember when I used to work in the yard, and um, and he's older than I am, and he said when I he's retired age, whatever that is. I don't know exactly how old he is, but and he said I used to work in the yard, and then the next day I felt fine. He said, but now I work in the yard, and the next day I'm just sore all over. I just wake up and everything hurts, and I just got aches and pains everywhere. Okay, and so we had a conversation about, so what should that mean? What should it mean to us if that's what's happening to us? Should it mean that we're just getting old? I mean, I hear that every day nearly. Man, I'm just getting old. I'm breaking down. That's what's going on with me. No, no, that's not the case. Don't let that be the excuse. If I came home tonight for supper and Leslie told me, I think we're just getting old. I really I really think I want a new boyfriend. Like, what? Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, what's going on? What and I know some of you have actually been through that before, and it sucked, I'm sure. And I'm sure if I get home tonight and she tells me that, it's going to suck too. But am I just going to say, what, like, okay, like, I guess we're just getting old? That's hogwash, right? But we say that to ourselves in our health. And so we were having that conversation this morning, and it was like, okay, to me, it's exciting feedback. It's like, man, it gives me a frontier. It gives me that thing. It's like, all right, wait a minute. I'm 53 years old and I don't wake up in pain. I wake up pretty good. I wake up feeling pretty good. I'm not feeling old. So if I'm 54 years old or 55 years old or 56 years old, and someday I wake up and I start to feel in pain, and I'm not feeling myself, okay, should I just accept that as being old, or should I say to myself, all right, dude, you've got yourself in an environment that's incongruent with health somewhere inside your environment. You have put that cell in an environment that's incongruent with health. Like you've actually you're doing something. So the question is, what are you doing? What is it that you're doing that's causing that to be like that? Okay, go back to the fundamentals. This is what I learned from my brother-in-law: food, water, oxygen, rest, and nerve energy. Those are the things. That's the 5 fundamentals of health: food, water, oxygen, rest, and nerve energy. What kind of food have I been eating? What is it that I'm fueling my body with? We go back to Joe's idea of Dr. Fraley's fuel and activation, right? Fuel, the fuel that I'm putting into my body. Is it causing my cells to function the way that they're supposed to function, or is it causing my cells to function in an environment that's incongruent with health? And then how deep does that well go right there? Like that's that one thing, the idea of food. And it's like it goes deep. It goes super deep. That's why every night I start the show off, except for tonight, because I was going to talk about vitamin D. That's what I was going to talk about on the show, and maybe I'll get to it. But that's why I talk about nutrition. That's where it just keeps stacking on each other, and it keeps stacking because it's so intertwined with itself, and it's so deep in its understanding that if you cared to learn about it, you would be fascinated by how your body actually works. You would be fascinated with what your body is capable of doing. You would be fascinated to know that if I don't have enough vitamin D, that I might actually become suicidal. Like, I've got an article. Maybe we'll get to it. If I don't have enough vitamin D, I might actually develop MS. We've talked about that. Remember, they don't really have MS on the equator. They have MS further away from the equator. Someone told me that one time. I was like, is that true? I had to go look it up. And I was like, why? Why is it that way? Why is Okinawa the place where there's always the oldest people? How I got I got into chiropractic in March of 2000, not from my injuries, but when I finally went to work for my brother-in-law 24 years ago. I got into chiropractic. You know who the oldest living people on the planet were 24 years ago? People in Okinawa. You know where they were after I got out of chiropractic school? People in Okinawa. You know where they are today? People in Okinawa. How come a person in Okinawa gets up at 65 years old and functions and moves and does things, but a person in Lubbock, Texas gets up at 65 years old and says, I hurt and I'm old? What's the difference? Is it because, I just think that's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that if one person could do it somewhere on earth, maybe we're all missing the boat on what we're doing on a daily basis. And that well of food just goes so deep. Should we eat organic? Should we not eat organic? Should we be keto? Should we be Mediterranean? Should we eat vegetables? Should we not eat vegetables? Should we eat vegetables green leafy vegetables that have oxalates in them, or should we not have any oxalates? Or like and we've done multiple shows just on that one concept of food. And the food that we put in our body and we fuel our body with is going to dictate the function of our body, or it's going to dictate the malfunction of our body, which is going to create interference in our nervous system. Because as soon as this tissue across this pec starts getting tight and starts getting adhesions, and as soon as this fascia starts crinkling up on itself, y'all ever tried to put saran wrap on a Thanksgiving dish after you got it out of the refrigerator for leftovers? Mama used to put saran wrap over the top of mashed potatoes and put it in the refrigerator. And then when you want leftovers, and maybe it was mashed potatoes and maybe it was chocolate pie, whatever. But I'm just saying, because I love that chocolate pie. But you take that saran wrap off of that mashed potatoes, and then you want to put the saran wrap back on top of the mashed potatoes to put it back in the refrigerator. It's difficult sometimes. That the saran wrap, if you don't catch the corners just right, and you try to pull it back over, it like sticks, right? It like sticks on itself, and it doesn't. You can't get it to stretch back out the way that it was supposed to stretch back out, and then you can't figure out how to get it over the corner, and then you try to tear off another piece and cover up that corner. That's fascia. That's fascia inside our bodies. And fascia wraps all around every single muscle in our body. And that fascia has nerves. And you crinkle up that fascia, you crinkle up those nerves. And it's like, my shoulder's stiff. It just doesn't, it hurts. It doesn't function the way it's supposed to. If it hurts or it's stiff, those are sensory statements. Those are words that are describing the sensory input into your brain. If your knees are stiff or your hips are stiff or your ankles are stiff, what you're describing is a sensory input of fascia, muscle, ligament, tendon, all the things that go along with it, the blood supply, the nerve supply into the nervous system, creating interference in the nervous system. And what might do that? Food. Food might do that. Why is it important to get good nutrients? Because your brain needs it, because your body needs it. That's why it stacks on top of each other. Food, water. We need water. We need water in some form or fashion. And I see people every once in a while. Al Michaels, the guy, he's the radio television guy. Al Michaels is the television guy. Never drinks water. Just drinks Dr. Pepper or whatever. Warren Buffett, same thing. It's like, just don't believe in it. Just drinks Coke or Dr. Pepper. Not a water drinker. Okay, you can have that argument, and you can make that argument for yourself, and you can try that and be one of those people that just drink Dr. Pepper your whole life, and just tell me how it works out for you. Because we need water. We need water in our body in some form or fashion. We need some water. Food, water, oxygen. If we don't get enough oxygen to the tissue will die. Just have a stroke. Just have a stroke and see how that works out for you. Get diabetic neuropathy and don't get any blood flow to your feet, and then tell me if you can fix your blisters on your feet. Yeah, it's not going to work, right? Wound healing. How many of you deal with someone who just cannot? They get a blister or something on their foot, and they've got diabetes, and they just can't get that to heal. Right? We need that oxygen. We need that oxygen for our brain. When you have a stroke, you cut the nutrients off to the brain, you cut the oxygen off to the brain, the tissue will die really quickly, and that's a bad thing. So we need exercise, right? We need to get out and move. And it's like, well, what kind of exercise? Well, we need to walk. That's one thing that we need to do. And that was the whole show for last night, was about exercise. And it's like, why? Because it's what it takes for the cells to be healthy. It's what it takes for the brain to be healthy. We will be healthier. We will be healthy. Excuse me. We'll be healthier if we'll exercise and get some oxygen. We need to breathe. We need to take some breaths, get some oxygen into our tissue. Food, water, oxygen, rest. We got to get rest. The rest is important. Here's this one little part of the Why We Sleep book by Matthew Walker. Just one little part. Sleep is not the absence of wakefulness. It is far more important than that. Described earlier, a nighttime sleep is an exquisitely complex, metabolically active, and deliberately ordered series of unique stages. Numerous functions of the brain are restored by and depend on sleep. Numerous functions of the brain are restored by and depend on sleep, right? We got to get our rest in order to get our brain to function the way that it's supposed to. If we're not resting, our brain's not going to work right. And there's lots of reasons that we're not resting. Like sometimes we're not resting because we have a newborn child and we're up all night taking care of the newborn child. Sometimes we're not resting because some of y'all, us, that's not a y'all statement. Some of us are not resting because of menopause. Like your hormones are all out of whack. And if she's not resting, I'm not really resting either, because she's slapping those covers and jerking those covers off of herself in the middle of the night because she's having a hot flash. Well, and it's disruptive for both of us, but it's more disruptive, obviously, for her. She's not resting, so her brain's not working right. We might be stressed out. We might be stressed out over finances or work or whatever our thing is that's got us stressed out. We might not be sleeping properly. We may just be staying up looking at our phones too late, and we don't give ourselves a chance to get that sleep that we need. Sleep is vital. Food, water, oxygen, rest, and nerve energy. And nerve energy is the last thing. It's that thing that impulse from the brain to the body and from the body to the brain. And that's what a chiropractic adjustment, when you go get adjusted, that's what you go get adjusted for, is to remove the interference, to reset the communication signal from the body to the brain. That's what a chiropractic adjustment is. It doesn't matter where I adjust you. I can adjust your ankle. I adjusted ankles today on a lady who's got headaches because the talus is related to headaches. I don't know how. Somehow the talus is related to headaches, and the talus is the bone in your foot that sits between your heel and your tibia, and sometimes that talus will rotate and it will create static electricity into the brain. It's called a subluxation. And so maybe it's in the foot. Doc, can you adjust my elbow? Man, my elbow's not working properly. That's what an adjustment is for. If my elbow's not working properly, it's not moving through its proper range of motion. It's decreasing the input into the brain. The brain is trying to set the body back into order. One of the things that I learned here in the last few years, that with all my functional neurology stuff, is proximal tendon pain is brain first. What is that? What does proximal mean? Proximal is closest to the torso, and distal is furthest away from the torso. So a proximal bicep tendon proximal bicep tendon, anterior shoulder pain, brain on that side. Distal bicep tendon, probably injury from something, lifting, twisting your arm, bringing your arm up, something like that. You hurt your arm down here, probably some sort of activity. But the first thing I think of now when I look at tendons is if it's proximal, if it's closest to the brain or versus furthest away from the brain, what I'm thinking is that it's brain first. And we've used that example with nutrition this week, or I think that was this week, Monday, when we talked about a nutrition evaluation that we started with the brain, right? We want the brain to function properly so that we eat the right foods. And then how deep can we get into that? Oh my gosh, right? Like we can, it's a lifelong journey for me to get into that. And I know at the end of my lifetime, I'll just have seen a little bitty piece of it. Like I can study this every single day for the rest of my life. And it's like, it's so humbling. One of the things that's been on my mind for the last few days, because we talk about the brain as if we know what's happening in the brain. And it's really, really, we really should have some humility when we're talking about the brain. What we really mean by all the stuff that we're saying, what we really mean by all the things that we say when we're talking about health is it's the best thing that we know now. It's our little glimpse of it. We should never, and I hope it doesn't come across that way. We should never talk about it as if we are the masters of it and we have it completely down and we know exactly what it's all about. Because that's not really true. That's not the way that the brain, the thing that it's just been hitting me for the last few days is how quickly I do things. And I think about, well, okay, that was a right brain and a left brain, and I did this and inhibited that and all that sort of thing. And it's like, dude, that was a microsecond. I mean, if you're going to get 3 trillion bits of information per second into your brain, well, how much time is it going to take for that? I mean, how much time is it going to take for each bit to get there? If we got to get 3 trillion bits in a second, so 3 trillionth of a second? No, we're moving up the same wires. We're moving up different wires inside. This nerve is different than this nerve, firing through the spinal cord, coming into a bundle. There's a billion neurons in your spinal cord, they say. And there's a lot of information that's coming in, and it's coming through different wires, but it's a microsecond, right? And what's really been on my mind lately is to be humble about the whole thing because that microsecond, your brain just processed a lot of information and handled it and sent information back down. And that's why I didn't fall off this stool. Or that's why I started to knock this over and I was like, oh, I caught it right there. Or, and I was actually thinking about that when I was making my bed this morning. I was actually thinking about going through that process in my brain about what my brain was doing and how fast my brain was working and all, like, coming into the room and what it was showing me. And I was like putting a pillow, girls put lots of pillows on beds. So we got a bunch of pillows on our bed. So I was making the bed, stacking the pillows all against the headboard and then setting another set of pillows, but I got them on the floor next to me because I put them there at night so I can get them in the morning. And so I was putting a pillow up, grabbing another pillow, and I had a pillow between my feet, and it was lots of stuff going on. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, how amazing is my brain? It just did all that. It just did all that stuff quickly. And I didn't fall over. I didn't hurt myself. I made the bed. Like it was, and it was like, man, there was probably, I don't know, several trillion pieces of information that just traveled through my whole nervous system and through my cerebellum and into my cortex and down to my body and back up to my brain, like all in milliseconds. It was like, wow, that was pretty awesome. And it it was something that I study every single day. So when we spend all this time talking about this, and I'll keep this book out for tomorrow because I wanted to talk about sleep the night before learning. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about because I talked to one of my college girls today, and she was talking about taking a test, and I was trying to explain to her that we actually create those synapses in the brain at night, and so I wanted to talk about that so I could send her a link to the show. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll get that broken down and give us something to talk about tomorrow. But and we'll also talk about vitamin D tomorrow. So you guys can, if you want to come learn about vitamin D and suicide and MS and how important it is, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting how many people have low vitamin D, but I'm not going to talk about that tonight. All of these things that stack together, and all of these things are in progress thing for me. They're an in progress thing for me to learn about it and then try to share it with you, and create it a package in a certain way that you might want to listen to it on the radio, or you might want to watch it on social media. That you might want to get this information, and maybe no one's ever. I really understand that there's probably no one else in your whole entire universe that's talked about some of the things that we talk about on the show. No one in my life had ever said subluxation. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought Rick made it up. I thought my brother-in-law made that word up. He didn't. He didn't. He didn't make it up. But the depths of understanding of it is really every single day, and it'll map to those 5 essentials. The like Dr. Chestnut says, the eat well, move well, think well stuff. Those things, what we eat, the way we think, the way we move, the way we send information into our brain, the way that our brain is functioning, the way that our brain sends information back to our body is going to dictate how healthy we are and for how long we're that way. And watch the show, Living to 100, I think is what it's called. See if I can find it right quick on Netflix. I've mentioned it several times. You guys probably already know it. And watch the first part of it, and watch the let's see. Maybe I wasn't on my profile. Let me see which ones we were. Yeah, live to 100. That's what it's called. Live to 100. Something, a study of blue zones or something. But Live to 100 is what it's called. It's on Netflix. And watch the first segment. It's on Okinawa. You can watch it. It's on Okinawa, and you watch the people move. Watch the lady. Watch her do her Tai Chi and move her arms and move her hands. And just think about it now that you've heard me talk about it. Think about it from a standpoint of input into the brain. And think that that's something that she does every single day. She does that movement every single day, whatever that movement is. I know that's not the movement, but she does that movement every single day. And what is it doing? It's neurologically firing her brain on both sides. She's moving her joints, which is firing her brain. She's doing it in a balanced position. She's doing it on her feet. She's standing on her feet. She's using her cerebellum to balance her body, to keep her in balance, and moving her hands, and constantly moving her hands and firing up and charging her brain and keeping her brain as healthy as possible for as long as possible. Hey, that's the show tonight. I hope you guys got something out of that. I hope it was fun to listen to, and I hope if you got any questions, send them to me, 806-794-0400. That's our text line. Send me a message on Facebook, and we'll make sure to get back with you. I hope you have a great night. You guys take care of yourselves. We'll be back here tomorrow night at 6, and we'll be talking about some sleep and some vitamin D, and unless we get something else that's inspiring, and we'll talk about that. So hope you guys have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow night on Life with Jason Clemmons, DC.